Time now for our Monday morning quarterbacks panel. On deck, a looming debt limit deadline and a fearful market after a stronger than expected jobs report. We want to bring in today's guest, Democratic strategist Rich Nichols and Republican strategist Gabriella Hoffman. Good morning to both of you. Happy Monday. Good to see you.
Morning.
Happy Monday, Jeanette. Good to join you.
Let's talk about the debt ceiling because it'll be everything, everything people will talk about leading up to the deadline here, which is really like the 1st of June, if not sooner. President Biden is set to meet with Speaker Kevin McCarthy tomorrow to try and discuss this. Gabriella, I'll start with you. What is the likelihood that any kind of deal or compromise will be reached, or at least the beginning of one, when they meet tomorrow?
Things don't look promising currently, but if President Biden were wise and he wants to improve his poll numbers and standing with Americans across the country, he'd be wise to hear what Republicans have to say about their plan to tackle the debt limit, negotiations. The president is not in a position of strength to be able to dictate to Republicans what should and shouldn't be, especially when you have two Senators Sinema of Arizona and Manchin, who are saying that, Mr. President, please talk with Republicans to get a deal. I would say straight raising the debt limit is a non-starter, and I think most Americans see that as well, because we have lots of, incurred debt. $10 trillion alone in less than 3 years under this president. Republicans certainly have a spending problem too, but Democrats continue to tax and spend, and that is contributing to this debt ceiling crisis that we're currently undergoing. So he needs to work with Republicans and not just name call.
Rich, I want to go to you on that. I was looking at a poll recently showing as far as where the blame would go if we were to go into a default. It was pretty even when it comes to Republicans and President Biden. I wonder, do you think that'll be the case? Do you think, as she said, as Gabriella said, that it's in Biden's best interest, more so on his part than Republicans, to try and reach a deal?
Well, I think the Democrats have to educate the public into the reality that, Congress has a fiduciary duty as stewards of our finances and our economy to pay our bills. And the bottom line is, no matter what the Republicans say, the bottom line is that we have a debt ceiling. It was $31 trillion. We met that ceiling in January. And in order to have enough cash to pay our bills, and this is to pay our bills for stuff we've already purchased. And the reason why we don't have enough cash is because the Trump administration cut taxes, and Republicans cut taxes by the tune of $1 trillion. So that's $1 trillion less cash that we have on the books today to pay our bills. And had we had that money and we met the debt ceiling in January, we would continue to have the cash required to pay our bills. So bottom line is, the Republicans in Congress have a fiduciary duty to the citizens of America to do what's required, raise the debt ceiling so we can pay our bills and keep our AAA credit rating around the world.
Gabriella, I want to ask you a question really quickly before we move on to the second half. Obviously, this is reminiscent of 2011, right, when really at the 11th hour a deal was struck. Still, the economy felt the impacts of even that, getting so close to the ledge there. How do you think things are different now compared to 2011?
Obviously, the debt is higher. And it's not when you cut taxes that you see this. The government wastes a lot of money. Let's be frank. The government has a lot of money. There's a lot of COVID mismanagement money still there. They waste programs across different spheres with respect to discretionary spending. So the other co-panelists can blame lowering taxes, but it really is a spending problem. The reason explaining this. So we're in a different situation now because we're in inflationary times, of course, and the debt is higher, and things just don't look really good either way you cut it. But you can't just blame cutting taxes. Tax relief is necessary, and people want to see tax relief coming up, especially with Biden's proposed budget, $6.9 trillion.
I think some folks would argue, even compared to 2011, things are even more divided now, which I think back then, if folks told you it would be even worse now, it would be hard to believe. So we'll have to see if a deal is reached here before we get to that deadline. Moving on to the second half, talking about the economy. We mentioned the economy. Folks are getting a little nervous as we approach the deadline for the debt ceiling. However, talking about the jobs report from April, over 250,000 jobs were added. That was more than what economists suspected. Rich, what do you make of this? Is this something that Biden should hop on, take credit for it, or is it a little tricky because we don't know how things are going to end if we are, in fact, going to have a soft landing?
Well, I think you've got two things going here. You've got the Fed trying to utilize traditional economic solutions to solve non-traditional economy problems. Bottom line is the rates have been raised to lower inflation. Inflation's not lower. And in fact, not only is inflation not lower, we have high job growth We have high consumer confidence. People are continuing to spend money. We've got high job growth where wages are continuing to go up. So these economists have a problem, and they can't figure it out either because, again, they're trying to use traditional economic solutions in a non-traditional economy. And finally, the Fed did say on Friday that they may take a step back before the next rate hike to try to study this situation because they can't seem to figure it out. But the bottom line is a good economy for any incumbent president is a great thing to have.
Gabriella, we have about 30 seconds, really 20 seconds. I'll give you the last word here.
Well, you should go by traditional economic metrics because that is how the economy is supposed to be viewed. It isn't supposed to be viewed by some revisionist perspective. And you look on the other side of the pendulum. Sure, there was job growth, but what type of jobs are those? Return jobs that were lost during the pandemic? Anecdotally, I talk to people across the country and you don't see that same economic kind of optimism across the country. Inflation is high, so wages are, if you're making more money, you're still spending more to compensate for higher prices at the pump, at the grocery store and whatnot. So it's not a rosy picture, and small businesses are going to be feeling the brunt of this. And even freelancers, they have rulemaking out that's going to make it harder for you to have to find alternative, work arrangements that'll help you kind of make up the difference here.
All right, we'll have to see. I think probably towards the end of this year, if in fact we're going to be seeing a soft landing and how all of this shakes out. Democratic strategist Rich Nichols and Republican strategist Gabriella Hoffman joining us this morning. Thank you to you both. Have a good week.